Good evening, everyone. Ian Patrick here, and tonight I have an interesting one for us. I saw this movie a few years ago during the time where I wasn't making reviews because of law school, and I remember after seeing it, I thought, man, I really would have loved to have reviewed that because I don't know how well known this movie is. But anyway, I watched it again, and here we are. So tonight's review is The House of the Seven Gables, based off the famous Nathaniel Hawthorne book, and it came out in 1940. It is a Universal Pictures film, and it's only about an hour and a half, which is great, really, if you're looking for a good fix of a good period drama movie. And a little bit of a controversy is not controversy, controversial topic is this a horror film or is it not? And honestly, I would definitely say it's not. In fact, I didn't think it was a horror film at all when I was watching it, but when I started researching it, a lot of people for some reason think this is a Universal horror film. They think, oh, Vincent Price, there's a little bit of a ghost story in there, but honestly, I don't see it as a horror film at all. But put in the comments what you think, like whether you think this is horror or not, and then we could have a friendly little debate in the comment section. But anyway, this movie, it stars Vincent Price, and he plays Clifford Pynchon. Clifford, such a funny name. He and his brother is played by George Sanders, and his name is Jeffrey Pynchon. And there's such an interesting combo because both of them, for one thing, are very tall guys. But also, I love that Vincent Price is not a creep in this, because Vincent Price was such a talented actor, and honestly, it's somewhat of a shame that he was typecasted as only being in horror films for the most part in his career, because in this movie you can really see his theater experience come out. He's such a good actor, and he has so much energy, and he plays the hero of the story, basically. And it's interesting because Robert Cummings was actually supposed to play Clifford Pynchon in this, but he became ill, so he wasn't actually in this, and we got Vincent Price playing the hero, which is awesome. This film was directed by Joe May. Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen any more of his pictures because he pretty much specialized in B films. In fact, this movie was made for the purpose of being a B film, and it was actually made on a B film budget. But it was sort of a secret Universal project. They didn't want other studios to know that they were working on another version of The House of the Seven Gables, because apparently there had been an earlier version, and I don't know if that movie has ever been found. But Margaret Lindsay plays Hephzibah. Such a funny name. I believe it's a biblical name, but it's funny to listen to that name throughout the film. And we also have Dick Foran, who plays a little bit of a young hero character in this. He plays the photographer, and I'll note Cecil Kellaway is also in this. He plays the family lawyer, and for all of us who watch so many old films, you'll recognize Cecil Holloway instantly. But let's see here. So the plot of the story, I'll note that there's quite a bit of a difference between the film and the book, The House of the Seven Gables. Most notably, I'll say the start of the film tells the whole background story between Clifford and Hephzibah. By the way, they're cousins, but that's not weird. Back then it wasn't weird, but they're lovers, and it tells the whole background story of their romance together and when they were younger. I believe the book sort of more starts out with when they're older and Clifford is already been sentenced to jail. But I liked the background story at the start of the movie, and so there's some differences, quite a bit of differences between the book and the movie. I'll note, for people who don't know what a gable is, because not everyone knows what a gable is. A gable is essentially, you know how houses have that triangle or whatever, where the two roofs meet, that front face is a gable. So there's essentially 7 faces surrounding the house. So there's 7 gables. Anyway, the plot or the setting of this movie is beautiful. And I've noted in past reviews, I'm such a sucker for period drama films and settings in sort of Victorian houses. But the setting is in Salem, Massachusetts. In fact, the director took influence of the actual house that Nathaniel Hawthorne based his book on. He took influence from that house in Salem, Massachusetts. I've been there. I went there when I was in middle school, and I went on a class field trip or whatever. It's a beautiful place filled with lots of mysterious corridors and secret passageways. So I highly recommend checking out the Real House of Seven Gables for you all one day. Beautiful place. And they built this beautiful house on the Universal set, and I love the house. They did a great job with it. But I love the settings. It's in Salem. They talk about Salem, and because there's some stormy nights. And in fact, I was watching with someone that kept saying, "Oh my gosh, it feels so cold." And maybe this is a little bit where that spooky factor comes in, where people think, "Is this a horror film?" But anyway, the settings are great. And it takes place, of course, during the 1800s. That's why it's a period drama picture. And Vincent Price's energy is amazing. It starts out where he's this young lad, and he's apparently distanced himself from his father's wishes for him to become a businessman or a lawyer or one of those things, and he wants to be a musician. And there's a note this scene where Vincent Price is actually singing and playing the harpsichord, and he has a beautiful voice. He really is a good singer. So, and then George Sanders is the stuck-up, he's always the stuck-up scoundrel of a brother, lawyer, and he wants, and the whole plot of the story is there's some sort of fortune buried somewhere in the walls or somewhere inside of the house. And this family has had this house in their possession for centuries or decades and decades. And Jeffrey Pynchon, played by George Sanders, he doesn't want to sell the house. Vincent Price's character wants to sell the house, so there's a feud between them. And then Vincent Price, Clifford, gets in an argument with his dad, and his dad has a heart attack after the argument. And George Sanders rushes in the room, and he's just thinking about money, and he says, "Murderer." And it turns into him accusing his brother of being a murderer, of killing their father, when of course he didn't. And Vincent Price has to go to jail, to prison for a life sentence. And there's also sort of this ghost mystery lingering in the back of the story, that the Pynchon family did another family wrong, so they believe that a ghost of that family haunts the Seven Gables. And that sort of plays in the story a little bit, because later, I believe Dick Fran's character or someone who meets with Clifford when he's in prison says, "Oh, I'm from that family," and they become friends, and they sort of work things out. And anyway, the ghost story doesn't play too much of a part in the actual movie, but I do want to note one scene, and that is the scene, spoiler alert, that is the scene at the end of the movie. It's so beautiful because everything has been resolved, and the family lawyer, Cecil Kellaway, he's looking at Vincent Price and Margaret Lindsay's character, Hepzibah, and they're older, and the makeup is so good in this. In fact, the makeup was done by Jack Pierce, and Jack Pierce was the man who did the makeup for most of the classic Universal horror pictures. He did the makeup for Frankenstein, but the makeup is very good. They aged Vincent Price and Hepzibah, and anyway, the lawyer's looking at them, and they're old souls. But then he says, I'll always remember you both as young lovers. And then it fades into when they were younger, and I just thought that was a really beautiful scene. Overall, I'm going to give this movie a 3 stars. It's definitely the perfect type of film to watch for a stormy night, but if you don't like horror films, this is a great period drama to watch during a stormy or rainy night, especially in the fall. It's nothing incredible out of this world, but it's definitely a memorable movie, and I definitely recommend it to you all. So I want to read a quote that there was some rumors that George Sanders and Vincent Price didn't get along on the set, but honestly, I don't really believe that. I can't see Vincent Price not getting along with someone because he was such a charming and friendly guy. But Vincent Price had this to say. He denied those rumors, and he later wrote, Sanders was, quote, a dear and wonderful man. I knew him really intimately and was very, very fond of him. He only pretended to be a dreadful man. So I thought you all would enjoy that quote. The only other thing I'll note is the screenwriter of this picture, Leslie Cole, he put in this film some sort of far left ideology because back then they were dealing with civil rights with African Americans. So he put some abolitionist stuff in there, and he made George Sanders' character a slave, like not a slave owner, but he was smuggling slaves essentially. So that is not in the book. A lot of people were not too happy back then with sort of that backstory. I don't think it really affects the movie too much. In fact, I didn't think of it too much while watching it, but I just thought it was something interesting to note. And this movie didn't do amazingly well, but it actually premiered alongside with a movie called Black Friday with Bela Lugosi in Chicago. So I guess Universal intended it for it to be a horror picture, but honestly, I just don't see it as that. I just don't. Let me know what you all think, and please watch this movie. Honestly, it's a good one. It really is. It's worth a watch, and just let me know what you all think of it. Have a good night, everyone.